brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Hello and welcome to Sip, Suds, and Smokes. This is good old boy Mike. We have a Suds segment today, and I want to thank you for joining us. Here in the studio with me is none other than Reverend Mark today.
Hello, friends.
It's good just to be just the two of us for today.
A beautiful day as it is.
It is, and it's a great day to always talk about really great beers. So this is a brewery takeover edition here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes on our Suds episode today. And our brewery is going to be Boulevard Brewing out of Kansas City, Missouri. And I can tell that everyone is completely thrilled about that, as I find the sound clip for everyone applauding about that. So Boulevard has been around for a while, and we have some interesting discussion to talk about what's going on with Boulevard. We have a lot of beers to talk about today as well. So in the lineup from Boulevard that we are going through, we may not talk about all of these today, but I will tell you all the beers that we did sample for this episode. Love Child number 3, Bourbon Barrel Quad, Reverb, Imperial Pilsner, the Nommo Dubbel, the Grainstorm Black IPA, the Terra Incognito, the collaboration with Sierra, Nevada Brewing, and Boulevard, and Rye on Rye. Those are all the beers that we are sampled for this episode. It's a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah, but somebody's got to do it.
I'm telling you, every time we say, I just can't believe that we actually enjoy sitting around and drinking beer and talking in microphones, and we just have way too much fun doing that. So we've had a chance to sample these beers, and along the way we're going to be rating each of these beers today as well. And those ratings are going to be 1 through 5. And let's see if I can actually remember each of these, since I don't have my notes in front of me. Number 1 is that sucks, give me anything but a bud. Number 2 was that a belch. Number 3 was
listen to that hang time?
Nope, that's number 5. That's sad. I actually forgot what number 3 is. Hey, was that? No, it wasn't a belch. Hey, that was pretty good. Number 4 is not good enough to be number 5, and number 5 is listen to that hang time, give me another. That's so sad. I actually forgot our such ratings. You can look them up online. So just send me a hard time by email. It'd be great. info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. So it's always great to screw something up in the first 5 minutes of each show. It makes the rest of the show a lot easier to go through. So Reverend Mark, we had a chance to taste all these beers. What are some of just overall impressions that you've had of Boulevard over the years? I mean, there have been a lot of beers that they've had.
Yeah, and I have sought out mostly their the boutique level beer, the Smokestack, but even just their regular packaged beer, so to speak. Always for me, if I'm passing through an area of the country, where I can pick up a 6-pack, I will. I think that they certainly honor a lot of various beer traditions, or brewing traditions, and we will get into a further discussion about their merger with Duvel. But at this point, I see that their dedication toward replicating really complex and yet sort of well-rendered Belgian products is one thing that always draws me to, at least half of their Smokestack series offerings every single year. I mean, why not? Why try to pay a premium on? There are a lot of good European beers that still come our way, obviously, and I love them as well. But to me, Boulevard has become a domestic beer with this particular series that offers me everything I love in the specialty type of Belgian beers that I spend a lot of time brewing myself.
Well, so I think that is definitely how I would characterize their Smokestack series, are a lot of Belgian-style ales that they have in the Smokestack series. I don't know that they use Belgian yeast all the way through and through with the Smokestack series. There are roughly around a dozen beers or more that they have in the Smokestack series. They have two other style of beers that they also produce. They're year-round beers, and they have about 6 or 7 of those. They also have seasonal beers that roll through as well. I've had some of their one-off offerings, as well. Sometimes there was a hockey game I went to, and there was they served a Boulevard beer at that hockey game, and that was the only place you could get that beer. Was there as well. Very warmly embraced, within the Kansas City area itself. Several places that I've really enjoyed Boulevard on tap, throughout Kansas City and through Kansas itself. So it's really great. I tend to think of them as a regional brewer. Their distribution model for the most part is on the East Coast, although they have expanded, substantially. The base of their distribution is actually has moved to the West Coast, on occasions as well. So it's not wide on the West Coast. Mostly Midwest. You would think it would be right around Kansas City itself, but they've really also worked up and down the East Coast as well. So you can definitely find this beer, and if you can't find it locally, certainly finding it through a mail order operation, if that's something you can legally do, order beer, have it shipped to you, then I would certainly say that this is a brewery you might want to check out. So some other facts about the brewery itself. Was founded by John McDonald. But I think it's interesting that when I tend to think about maybe the founders of craft brewery, John's not in that circle, is he?
No, not at first, but as I've picked up on his story and his his commitment from sort of the middle part of his adult life to now venturing into sort of the retirement twilight years. He's a guy that brings a lot of passion to his product, and as this new merger has occurred, it seems to me that he has been very focused on who can take this tradition to this tradition of quality to the next level. So I'm very impressed with their. I don't know so much about their business model and how it will succeed in the future, but I do see that at least their focus on replicating traditional beer styles and then going a step or two beyond, because we're into the age of imperialization of everything, that they have done that well, in a way that some breweries, I think, go a little bit too far.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely one of those things where when I look at John's location in Kansas City, I think was a bit of a handicap. First off, when I think about where a lot of brewing was really taking place within the craft beer market, I didn't really think of Kansas City as traditionally really being kind of the hotbed of a lot of what was going on. They actually started in 1988 is when John started Boulevard, and their first batches actually came out in the fall of '89. So when I really think about where was the craft beer industry kind of at that microcosm of time, I don't believe that I would say Kansas in any shape or form, was really kind of
not at all.
The center of that at all. So, I have to say that the fact that John persevered in what I can only imagine was a rather challenging, market in a place where the concept of craft beer alone was a bit of a novelty. It was probably one keg at a time, that he was declaring victory. And they actually grew rather quickly. By 2006, they actually increased their capacity to 600,000 barrels per year. Now, you and I look at those numbers and go, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, now Boulevard produces over 185,000 barrels of beer each year. So not too shabby.
They're in the top 10 of all the macro breweries that are. Yeah.
So I would definitely say that that's doing pretty good in that period of time, and certainly the base of volume that they're doing with as well.
But I think you make a good point of when they started, because, in 1989 in the Midwest, in the South, Southeast, you really didn't have access to the kind of craft beer that people on the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, and even East Coast, at least at that point had grown comfortable with. So, the fact that they were able to establish a brand, and I think local craft beer also is, tethered to a local craft industry, which means local employment. And that it is serving the city, where it's distributing, and so I can't help but think that people in the Kansas City area and beyond, responded to this because this is an enterprise that's not only helping the economy, but it's giving us a certain kind of distinctiveness that's not really been associated with this part of the country up to this point, at least back in those days.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. I just think doing anything really well for 21 years at the level that they've been doing at, that's to be admired. Mm-hmm. I have this, working theory in business, which is, things fall apart on 7-year intervals. And, the fact that they have, broken through the 7-year problem as well as had a point of sustainability for as long as they have, it's really quite amazing. Beverage industry is just something that just always defies logic at times, and we're going to have a chance to talk about changes that have happened with Boulevard here as well. But first up, we're going to talk about our top picks out of these beers. So let's get right to talking about some of the beers. We had some really great picks, and I'm going to let you go first, Reverend Mark. So what was your top pick?
Well, this is going to be counter to everything I've said up to this point about what I really like in a beer, because I'm a home brewer, so I can tell you every third beer that I brew is a Belgian style of one kind or another. But I'll have to say that my favorite pick, and they were all wonderful. I hated to have to even limit it to the top 3, but my top pick would have to be the Reverb Imperial Pilsner.
How about that?
Part of it, I think, is because for me, I am, as a home brewer, a person who really extols the virtue to other people who are trying to get in the hobby by saying brew true to style. And so, it's really important just to look at the established styles from Germany as well as England, and of course, the various American permutations of styles that have come from Europe and places that have influenced us. But for me, at least, as I look at the Pilsner, that is an extremely delicate, exquisite beer that's difficult to brew, in my opinion, because I just brewed one a couple of months ago, and it's still lagering. And I've also, viewed the imperialization of the Pilsner. A lot of different companies are doing that, and I think most of them get it wrong. That is, they tend to tilt more in the direction of a 9-10% type beer, which to me is not a Pilsner. I think the Boulevard Smokestack version of it, the Reverb, really hits it on the head, in that it is very reminiscent, of just a classic Pilsner beer with a little bit of an amped up aspect to it. It's a little stronger, but that delicate style is still there. You get the SUDS hops, which I just love. They're kind of minty and also aromatic. And it just finishes well. And I think sometimes simplicity is a wonderful thing in a beer. So at least for me today, of all the beers that we sampled, which I guess were 7 or 8, it was kind of hard because the other 2 that we'll mention later were very good as well. But I'll have to go with the Reverb Imperial Pilsner.
So what's your SUDS rating going to be?
I'll give that one a 5.
A 5. Listen to that hang time. Give me another. So, there we go. Let me say it again. And now I've actually managed to find, all of my notes on what the heck my ratings are, so so I won't sound like an idiot the rest of the day. A little too late on that one, but anyway. So, really great choice, and the strange thing about this is it actually is exactly the same as mine. It was my top pick as well. We did not compare notes in advance.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
As much as we compare a lot of things, this was not one of them. I do want to tell you a little bit more about this beer. So this is Boulevard Smokestack Series Reverb Imperial Pilsner is the name of this beer. Again, it is widely distributed in the Midwest on the East Coast, where you should be able to find this. This beer has an ABV of 7.7%, and I won't tell you the calorie count or the fact that it is declared as summer seasonal. But this is really a great beer. My tasting notes around the Reverb is it's probably the first sweet Pilsner that I've ever had, and I thought that my first reaction was that I don't think this is brewed to style, and I think part of it is because I tend to think of, most Pilsners are going to be a lot more crisp, a lager, more of a lager style, and I think just that sweet characteristic was the thing that kind of tossed me off. There was an earthy quality that just kind of came in on it as well, and that must be the style of the hops that they're using with this that really kind of drew me in. And I just think that, most Pilsners and Imperial Pilsners that I tend to have are dry and crisp and have a bitterness to it, and this is not anything like that. So, I don't know exactly who is really brewing true to style. I would have a tough time believing this was true to style, but I don't really care. It was a really, really good beer.
Well, an Imperial Pilsner, by definition, is not true to style because a Pilsner is anything but an Imperial beer.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that they have put forth an Imperial-style Pilsner and have not gone overboard.
That's true. This is not boozy at all. And the flavor is in check. I really love how everything's kind of in balance with this beer. I've been sipping it as we've been talking here, and it's really kind of lingering on my palate. I like kind of the sweet bittering that's kind of left on my palate. It's kind of like coated the very top of my tongue, and it's just it's a really great beer. I can really see coming back around to this. I don't know if I would use the word chuggable, but I would definitely say that this is a really great beer. I think it's very representative of a lot of great beers in the Smokestack series. My SUDS rating for Reverb Imperial Pilsner is going to be 3. Was that a belch? I'm sorry. What a relief is number 3. I knew I'd get it right someday. I doubt it. Who writes this stuff? I need a new script writer. Anyway, so really great to at least jump out and talk about beer. But I know the question that we wanted to definitely come back around and visit is, so what has happened here is that the Macro Brewery has been on the prowl once again, and Boulevard Brewing has been acquired. Some estimate most of the deals between $110, $120 million that Duvel Morgat has paid for Boulevard here. So a lot of these deals have been coming around, and you and I have kind of been watching them. This is probably about the 3rd or 4th major deal that's gone down maybe in the last 3 years. Probably one of the largest ones was the acquisition of Blue Moon. And then shortly thereafter is when InBev, bought Budweiser. Then you had InBev acquiring Goose Island. So those are some of the larger deals that have gone down. So in the middle of parting with $120 million to John, and I'm sure he has a base of investors that he may have, had to pay out. He lost his job, at least of running the brewery, but
he's on the board of directors of this conglomerate. So,
sure,
yeah,
it's not like he's lost touch. But the thing is that they've brought in an executive from Miller Coors, Mike Mogulas, to actually run this new company that Duvel has acquired in Kansas City, Missouri market. I don't know what's your first reaction, at least to what John's done here, and do we call it selling out or we call it reinvesting and ensuring the viability of the product? I mean, how do you look at it?
I'll tell you what, I'm really torn about this particular acquisition because just what little I know, and I have read several articles about this merger as it occurred, is that I think he was very intentional about the company that he allowed for to take over to acquire his company, and that their vision of craft beer, and certainly the fact that Duvel is Belgian and has a more of a European understanding of the variety of high gravity as well as just sort of everyday thirst quenching beer that can satisfy a broad market, that they are really trying to just sort of up their distribution in a way that will still give evidence that they are committed to quality. Now, there's a big question in my mind is that as you become a super macro, if you can really pull that off. And I think that the odds are slightly in their favor that this is going to be a good thing, but I think we're just going to have to revisit this in another year or two to see just where it's going.
Well, I guess one of the things that struck me about some of the press releases that were coming out is a lot of the Duvel executives saying, we're not doing what InBev, has done, with these other brands, these other products, where you come in and you acquire the product and you lay off 2/3 of the staff and you move, a lot of those beers over onto your macro lines and into your bottling plants, and away you go. That has been the model that had been in place and established with many of those other acquisitions. But the thing that I found interesting is Duvel saying that they're actually going to grow this brewery and this brand. I guess the one thing that I would find captivating is if this could be the big move of bringing American craft brew to the European market.
Yeah, what an irony.
Yeah, what a great irony that InBev would not be the first ones to actually bring, what I would consider a craft brew, into the European market. It would actually be Duvel, and I just that would be it'd be a strange toe-to-toe moment for the Germans and the Belgians to go head-to-head on products that are not native, to their own countries. That would be the great irony.
Right.
I hope somebody's laughing about that all the way to the bank.
I don't think that the Europeans, by and large, are as into the imperialization of beer as we in America have been. I think that's true. That's a distinctively American sort of beer phenomenon. You definitely have big beers that I think in some ways sort of suggested to American breweries, that we need to amp up, our alcohol volumes in our beers, and thus we have the imperialization of all kinds of beer styles. But the European market is more focused on being true to traditional styling of beer. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how, if Boulevard makes its way into the European market, what kinds of beers are really sought out. And it may actually be the American styles more so than those that are replicating the existing styles that are already there in Europe. So I don't know. I'm very hopeful that they'll make a good go of it abroad, but I'm more concerned about what does that say to the consumer here.
Yeah. Well, so it's a good segue to talk about. So I had picked up a little bit of this question with a couple of other hosts that have been on the show with Kix Player and Irony, and that was really kind of the focal point of a lot of the conversation we were having, which is I really don't care about the money or, frankly, the brand. I just care about the beer.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So I think that's. I love the rolling question that we've had, on the show, which is the craft beer bubble reality? And I think that there's some interplay between that question and what we're looking at here. I think the follow-on question that I want to have going alongside of this is, what about the beer man? Not the beer man, but the beer itself. Is the quality of the beer going to lose any ground? Is it going to remain the same? Or frankly, is it going to suffer? As people come in and, are asserting a different level of quality of ingredients as you move to a macro level. Those first 400 pound of those hops were fine, but the last 10 pounds, but look, it's all going to be blended together. Well, nobody's really going to notice.
Yeah.
It's those very simple subtleties of diluting the decision-making process that you do on a macro level that you lose, the element of the passion and, more importantly, the quality of the product. So I guess one of the things that I've watched is what's going on with Goose Island, and I wonder if that is a bit of what's going to play out here at Boulevard as well, where a lot of the perennial lines that were in play at Goose Island, like Honkers and the Goose Island India Pale Ale, 312, a lot of those moved off into the contract lines for InBev, and they actually don't brew those beers in Illinois at all, not in Chicago. They're brewed in New York. But a lot of the other beers that they have that are the seasonal beers, like Juliet, Sophia, a lot of those beers, I believe, are still being brewed out of Chicago. And for a bit of a hand, I believe that the original brewers are actually still heavily involved with a lot of that series that they're still brewing there in Chicago. So I wonder if you're going to see some similar split, that the perennial products that are made here by Boulevard are going to move off and be made on the macro lines, with Duvel. And the Smokestack series is going to continue to be made exclusively in Kansas City. I don't know. Any speculation what you think is going to happen?
Well, I know for one thing that, again, I have to kind of center down on, my sort of realm of expertise, which is very limited, but it is limited to that of being a home brewer and one who reads a lot about the brewing process and how to replicate beer styles. And I think, I know that, what really suggests a beer to a public as a quality and desirable product, be it a local consumer base or regional, is that as the beer is brewed on premises in a certain location, you're also dealing with the question of water, local water, what you do with that water, and whether or not that particular kind of water is replicated if you sort of scale up your operation as a microbrewery and start brewing in other places. I've been very suspicious of even local breweries that have, ventured into contract brewing, with other breweries, around the country.
I mean, really, what is the difference at the end of the day when you take somebody that, is a craft brewer and they do contract brewing? You know, they're running it on the same equipment that the macro brewers are running it on anyway. 9 times out of 10, really, the only difference between that and what is going on here is who's getting the benefit and the profit of that at the end of the day. The nature of the product itself, I still think that there's some measure of influence about quality, that is really being held very tightly there. That you don't have accountants, responsible for determining the quality of ingredients, so to speak. So,
right.
Not that there aren't good accountants that know quality ingredients. Please do not sue me. Anyway, so let's move on and talk about some more beer. Really great discussion. Listen, I'd love to know your thoughts on the subject about a lot of the acquisitions, and definitely you're welcome to probably pick up the topic on our Facebook page as well. Always drop us a line at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Complaints about this discussion can be sent to I really don't give a crap to at sipsudsandsmokes.com. More beer. All right. So let's talk about our number 2 pick. I'll go first this time.
All right.
So, so my number 2 pick is actually going to be the collaboration brew, which was the Boulevard and Sierra Nevada Terra Incognita. I'm sorry. This particular beer was declared a sour and wild ale. Was the declared style. It has an ABV of 8.5%. Good broad distribution, although very difficult to find, I would say. It was originally brewed and released at the Savor Fest for 2012, and then it was re-released to the general public on 6/18/13. We actually snagged this bottle while we were out at GABF this year, and so this is the first time we've had a chance to enjoy this and talk about it. Really caught my attention. I guess the best way I would describe it is it was like a sour English ale. It just had kind of all of these very simple earthy qualities about them. I thought that it was very tasty. Everything was in check. I think that was just the thing that really captured my attention. It just had really good balance. The aging on this was an aged sour as well. I think one of the things I always wonder that a lot of people always have to struggle with aging, when is it too much and when is it just enough? And knowing, what is the balance between basically the barrel, over-influencing, the product that's in the barrel itself. And I just thought that they had some really elegant timing, about the aging around this as well. It just seemed to complement everything that was really going on in the beer already. So my sips rating for this is going to be 4. Did you taste this? What do you think of it?
I did, and I thought, as the name suggests, Terra Incognita, that it was full of earth, and I think of English beers, especially those that are, they're all hopped on a minimal level, because the British are not big into hop bombs, even though they're certainly known for their bitters. That there was an earthiness that came through with the Fuggles and the East Kent Golding hops. I found, though, a little bit of fizz in the action of the beer.
It was a little carbonated.
It was a little bit more carbonated than an English style beer would be, but interestingly, it served to sort of stir up the English hop character that would have been otherwise understated. So I think that's why I kind of got a little bit more of that Fuggles and Golding kind of earthy quality to those noble hops. I thought it was a very good beer. It wasn't in my top 3, but all of these beers we sampled were amazing.
So what's your SUDS rating on this one?
I give it a 3.
A 3. So I think this would definitely be a beer that most people if they're chasing a style, they would be sorely disappointed, because I just don't think you would come in and say, I'm looking for something that's kind of English style, a little bit on the sour side. Really? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Is your blood pressure medicine in check? But I think looking beyond, that, it's a really good beer, and I was really surprised. Again, it was one of those things that you look at the style, or even looking at the base of ingredients. I wouldn't even characterize this even as having as much bread as they were even saying that is here as well. It's subtle, So, all right, what's your number 2 pick, Reverend Mark?
All right, I'm going to have to go with the Love Child.
The Love Child, number 3.
Yeah.
If I had, a good Beatles tune, I think this would be the time to probably fire something up, from the 60s. So the Love Child series, there was Love Child number 1, number 2, number 3, and I believe that number 3 was a blend of 1 and 2 or something like that, I think. I probably can read it right here in front of me, and it would tell me that. But why don't you tell us what you thought about the beer?
Well, in sort of juxtaposition to my number 1 pick, which was the Imperial Pilsner, this is sort of the opposite end of that spectrum. This was clearly a sour kind of funk-forward ale with a hint, I think, of a very bright kind of fruit-like layers of like cherry and raspberry. I'm not saying that those were added, so don't read that into it. But there was a brightness, that kind of counterbalanced the funkiness, and I thought it finished remarkably clean. You definitely got the funk character going on there on the intake, but it didn't really linger on and on and on and on and on. So I just thought it was a good, for funky beers, and those of us who are trying to use the cliche, embrace the funk. It's a good one to embrace.
What's your SUDS rating on this?
I give it a 3.
A 3. So I had a chance to definitely taste this as well, and it's interesting. I love this. You and I never compare tasting notes, and I always love tasting beer with you, because some days we're just like right on top of each other, in terms of what we thought, and then other days it's just, I respect what you're tasting and what I'm tasting as well. But in this case, the first 2 words I wrote down was, wow, this was a bright sour.
Yeah.
And it just, I think that it was some of the things that were really going on with this. This was probably definitely, of the few sour beers that we had in this lineup, this was definitely what I would say had an awful lot of funk going on. It has a combination of several different, a lot of different things going on. This is not like one beer. Even it is a blended beer, and beer is aged at different points in time that go into Love Child number 3. One of the beers is aged from 16 months to 6 years, and then another portion of the beer is 11 months in stainless steel tanks that has lactobacillus, that is the souring agent behind it, and then they blend the two, behind that. So, I think that, I'm a huge fan of blending beers, and I really think that is a huge wave of beer making that is really coming down the pike. I think for those of you that are purists in making beer, you go, oh my God, please don't bring winemaking into my beer.
Yeah.
That is not in the BJCP, guideline, is blending beer really effectively. You like, one style, declared style. But I think that it really opens up the artistry, of what the product that people are making here. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about this, is that I think that if somebody had just been going for a straight up, what I would consider a golden ale that had been added lacto right on top of it, I don't think it would have even approached, as good as this is. And I think that by playing around with it, in both in oak barrels and different aging characteristics around it, I just think they accomplished something here that normally that you couldn't. So my SUDS rating for Love Child number 3 is also a 3. All right, so that brings us around to a number 3 picks. And my number 3 pick was a real surprise. Good old boy Mike's number 3 pick for Boulevard Brewing is going to be Grainstorm Black IPA. And I know everybody's just really shocked with that. And I think that if you have listened to any of our prior shows about discussions of, especially of black IPAs, I think that it does. It takes a long, deep breath, for me to talk about black IPAs, with a straight characteristic. Let me tell you a little bit about some of my tasting notes here, and then kind of talking through a little bit of some of what was playing through my head at the same time. It was very deep, roasty, and hoppy. Those were the 3 words that really came out to me very quickly. It was better than your average black IPA. And I love the extra roast characteristic that was really coming through, on this particular black IPA. I'm not really a huge fan of this style of beer. And for me to pick it out of this lineup with all these really great beers to choose from, really says that I really thought that they had done something above and beyond what I have really had with other black IPAs, and I think that it really just was showing some of the quality of what could be done here. And I think to me it's finally brought around at least some presentation of this style to say you got to chase that roasty flavor. You can't just say, well, I'm just making a black IPA and I'm putting in a roasted hop just so that I have the coloring agent here and it'll be black at the end of the day. And then I can overlay it with the same hops that I would apply, whether if I was doing, a roasted malt or not, they have actually infused flavor through the component of the roasting, element itself. And I thought that really kind of brought the beer around, for me. My SUDS rating for Grainstorm Black IPA is going to be a 3. Reverend Mark, did you have a chance to taste this?
I did, and actually, I agree with everything you've said. I thought, in terms of this particular, sort of sub-style, we have the IPA and now the black IPA, that I'm not always overwhelmed by a lot of what I sample among black IPAs on the market these days. I thought this was like the top of the heap. I thought it was an excellent beer. We just had so many good beers to sample today.
True.
It didn't make it into my top 3. But I like the fact that it, the grain bill is that of wheat, rye, and barley. So you have a combination of wheat and rye in particular that provides a very, significant margin of dryness and a little bit of punch of spice, which I like. And, the hop bitter was there throughout, the bitter flavor and aroma. And getting back to the kind of the roasted aspect that you were just, ruminating about, I think it was there. There was some roastiness in that, but not too much. I think that what happens oftentimes with these new kind of innovations where you have now a black IPA is that you have to be really careful about how much roasted malt you put into your grist, because it can make the beer also, aside from roasty, a little bit astringent. And I found that this beer had some nice roast. It was a secondary kind of aspect, but it wasn't astringent. And I think that they probably used some roasted barley as well as maybe some deep bittered black malt. I don't know. But I think they hit a really good balance here.
Mm-hmm. So what's your SUDS rating on this?
I'll give it a 3 as well.
Well, a couple of things that I missed as I was going through. So I'm glad you did mention, the grain bill on this is a combination of barley, oats, wheat, and rye. Although they declared a black rye IPA, this is not what I would consider a straight up rye, beer itself. And so I think that all that, definitely worked out, to their advantage.
A little bit of rye goes a long way, so they didn't have to have a lot in there to just kind of give that little bit of a spice, punch. Doesn't take much at all.
Yeah. So what's your number 3 pick?
I'll have to go with the Bourbon Barrel Quad. and it is finished off with cherries, and it sounds really pretty decadent. But I think one of the reasons why I chose it as my top 3 is that it was not overly decadent. I mean, it was the cherry was there, and it was just kind of very suggestive of what was going on in just a kind of a cacophony of flavors. It was smooth, but it also packed a punch. It was a balancing act that was on the level of a Cirque du Soleil, of just keeping all these things going.
All right, I don't think I've ever heard the word Cirque du Soleil and beer in the same room at the same time.
There was a definite hint of cherry goodness in all this. But it was kind of
also not a word that
cherry
goodness. That is not a real word.
Yeah, you have to go online other places for that one. But it was more like sort of the, if you will, the lone cherry on top of the exquisite sundae. It was kind of like it didn't override the flavor. It was just there and kind of added to what was going on, to the tart. It had a little bit of a tartness, but not overly. So I've had this. I actually have bought a few bottles of this recently, and maybe that's part of it, is that I just liked it so much in the past that I liked it today as well. But I'll give it a 3.
A 3. Well, some other things to know about this particular beer. It is part of the Boulevard Smokestack series. Bourbon Barrel Quad is the name of this beer. And it is loosely based on the Sixth Glass, which is another Abbey-style quad that they basically make. And they actually move it into a number of oak barrels with various lengths of time, and they end up blending it specifically, and then adding cherries, as a bit of a flavoring agent here as well. My tasting notes around the Bourbon Barrel Quad, it was very booze forward, and in fact, it was actually a very sweet quad for me. I really love this style of beer in general, but I think that I'm just not a huge fan of cherry, and I think that just kind of killed it for me. Even with that, I still thought it was a good beer. My SUDS rating for the Bourbon Barrel Quad is going to be a 3. So there's our lineup for our 1, 2, and 3 picks out of everything here from Boulevard, as well as our discussion about the great acquisition of Boulevard as well. I just want to say that I managed to get through almost this entire episode, and I didn't say the word monetize even once, did I? So I told you that I was going to try to keep my big words in check.
But that's what we're worried about.
The grand sellout. So anyway, I tried not to use any big words during this episode. So there you have it. Well, I want to thank you for listening to all this episode and joining us for all the great shows here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. We always have a great time talking about everything in life that's worth discussing. It's been a real pleasure having Rev and Mark here for this discussion as well.
Thanks for the beer, man. This is great.
Well, always a good day with a lot of great beer to talk about. Hey, listen, if you've not checked out any of our other episodes, you can catch them all over the place. You name it. We're on iTunes. We're on Spreaker. We're on Stitcher now is the name of that new distribution. We're about to be on iHeartRadio. So if you're listening to us in your car and you have a overwhelming desire to stop by the liquor store, we've effectively done our job. I want to thank you for that. You can catch us, our daily tasting notes flow out through Twitter at SipSudsSmoke, and it's really great because the thing I've caught about this is I actually see your tasting notes and mine flowing out through there, and people will comment back through Twitter about your tasting notes or mine, and so I see them flowing back and forth all the time. You're not seeing a lot of that, so a lot of people are enjoying both our tasting notes, but you don't get to see a lot of the comments coming back, and it's actually kind of fun. I enjoy that. quite a bit. You can always drop us a note by email at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. We're on Facebook. You can definitely catch a lot of our great information through our Facebook site as well. Most of all, I want to thank our audience for joining us and join us for another episode here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. Right now, I'm going to thank, again, our other co-host, Reverend Mark, for joining us.
This has been a lot of fun.
This is good old boy Mike, and I'm going to ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.